I want to thank everybody for joining the latest installment in the PhUSE Webinar Wednesdays. As you can see, it's been about 6 months since the Computational Science Collaboration hosted its annual symposium in beautiful Silver Spring, Maryland. And as summer is ending, we are starting our march to the 2017 CSS. So over the next few months, in conjunction with the PhUSE office, the Computational Science Collaboration will be conducting a series of webinars to help you get ready for the 2017 CSS. And I know it feels like that might be a long while away, but it's going to creep up on us here very quickly, just in the same way that it did last year. So to kick off our Marching to March series, we're going to have the working groups just give an overview of sort of their mission statements, the projects that they have that are ongoing, what their needs are, and kind of what their outlook is as we start to kind of head and think about our Computational Science Symposium in 2017. But before we really get started in earnest, I just want to remind folks that may have not joined before, if you are participating, you do happen to be on mute. We will be recording this session, so if you do have colleagues that are interested in the Computational Science Symposium or the Computational Science Collaboration, webinar will be posted to the PhUSE website, as well as the presentation about a week after or a week and a half after the session today. Additionally, if you do have questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end, assuming we have time. Please just type your questions into the question functionality on the GoToWebinar console, and we will get to those at the end. If we do not have time for your questions, we will make the best attempt to answer them offline and provide you with a response. So again, this is the format for today's webinar. I'm just going to open with a few introductory remarks before we hand it over to the working group co-leads for the meat of the presentation. So if you haven't joined before, or if you have and you need a little bit of a refresher, this is really the mission statement of the Computational Science Collaboration. The collaboration itself is an opportunity for regulatory agencies, including the FDA, PMDA, EMA, et cetera, industry, as well as technology vendors, the CROs, and academia, really just to come together in a non-competitive environment and address challenges that we are facing in both the industry and regulatory space. And ultimately, really the purpose of this, and I think sometimes this gets lost in our day jobs and it gets lost a little bit even in the collaboration itself, it's really to bring safe, effective treatments to market faster and get those in the hands of the patients who are suffering and who really need them. So the framework for the collaboration is a series of 5 working groups in the steering committee, and you'll hear from each of the 5 working group co-leads today, again, to kind of give you an overview of each of the working groups, as well as walk you through some of the activities that are occurring within the working groups. So I won't steal their thunder by pontificating and pandering on. What I will say is there are opportunities for you to get involved. And I encourage you to visit the PhUSE website. We have a dashboard which gives a brief summary of all of our currently active projects, as well as a link to the PhUSE wiki page for each of those projects where you can get more information. And from the dashboard, you can actually reach out directly to the working group co-lead or to the project co-lead to get involved. Today, you'll hear a bit about some of the deliverables that have been produced within each of the working groups. And we have all of the finalized work packages consolidated in a central area. So if you are interested in things like the SDRG or the SEND implementation forum or the Statistical Computing Environment white paper, you can go to this catalog of deliverables and find all the deliverables produced by the different working groups and access those at your convenience. Additionally, as the working groups complete deliverables, and you'll have to see some of the working groups talking to this today, they do actually post the draft work packages for public comment on the PhUSE website. So if you do want to have your voice heard and don't have time really to volunteer for a project, this is another opportunity for you to get involved in a PhUSE Computational Science Collaboration working group. So I think 2016 has actually been quite a banner year for the Computational Science Collaboration. It was our 5th annual CSS conference in Silver Spring, Maryland. The conference, in my opinion and in the opinion of quite a few attendees, it seems to run quite smoothly, and it seems to be a kind of a well-oiled machine at this point. People come in, They meet with their working groups and their projects. They get a lot of work done. It's very collaborative. So it was really a great conference this year. And building on the success of the conference in the US, we held our first annual EU Computational Science Symposium in Basel, Switzerland in June of this year. And that was similarly well received. We actually had colleagues from the PMDA and EMA join in those sessions. So again, another successful symposium, and we're looking forward to doing that symposium again in Europe next year as well. Some of our other key accomplishments for 2016 is we've had some excellent collaboration, both with regulators as well as other organizations outside of PhUSE. As I mentioned, the EMA and PMDA joined our EU CSS by teleconference, and for the first time we actually had the PMDA in person at our conference in Silver Spring, Maryland in the US this year. And we look forward again to continuing to collaborate with those regulatory authorities as well as the FDA as we move forward within the context of the computational science collaboration. Additionally, as you'll hear Jane Lozano talk about in the Optimizing Use of Data Standards Working Group, we actually have our first co-sponsored project between PhUSE and an external organization. In this case, the project has been co-sponsored by CDISC. It's a project to look at implementation challenges that people are having within industry as well as the regulatory space with SDTM and ADAM. And I'll let Jane talk to you a bit more about that during her presentation. So additionally, in 2016, we actually had 2 working groups that actually rebranded their names, and I think that reflects an increased focus of those working groups. And again, kind of as we've been doing this over the last 5 years, it's been a work in progress. And there's, again, been some refinement and some honing in on different ideas or different responsibilities for the working groups. Since the 2016 CSS, we've actually kicked off 7 new projects, and we finalized 6 deliverables in 2016. So again, I feel like, in my opinion, 2016 has really been a banner year for the computational science collaboration. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of new projects kicking off. There's a lot of work getting done. And you'll hear a bit, again, about that today during the course of the presentation. So again, I would encourage you, now is a great time, if you've been involved, to continue to stay engaged. If you've sort of been involved and fallen off the radar, it's an excellent opportunity to sort of get back on the bandwagon, so to speak. And if you're new to the computational science collaboration, again, it's an excellent time as we start thinking about the 2017 conference for you to join, get involved, and then come to our conference or come to the conference in 2017. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to our first working group co-lead from the Standard Analyses and Code Sharing Working Group, Mary Nilsson, who would talk to you a bit about that working group. So Mary, I'm going to hand the presentation rights over to you.
Okay, do you see my slide and do you hear me?
Perfect, yeah, it looks great.
Okay, great. So I'm Mary Nilsson. I'm one of the co-leads of the Standard Analyses and Co-Sharing Working Group. We are actually one of the 2 working groups that did rebrand our name, so it is a new name. We want it shorter, and we also wanted to give a little bit more visibility to the Standard Analyses portion of our efforts instead of focusing on just on the code part. We do have these Standard Analyses effort, and we thought it didn't really have visibility in our previous name. So we did update that. We also wordsmithed our vision and goals a bit more, but essentially it hasn't changed, right from the start from 2012. I mean, our vision has remained pretty stable, but we did word it a little differently. So our goal is to leverage crowdsourcing to improve the content and the implementation of analyses for medical research. So our main 3 goals are to maintain a repository for code sharing. The second one is to develop recommendations for analyses and displays in areas that could benefit from crowdsourcing. So we're focusing on the data that's common across therapeutic areas, whereas groups like Transcelerate are tending to focus on particular therapeutic areas. We're focusing on things like adverse event labs, vitals, and those kind of data. And then our third goal is to, where gaps exist, to develop code associated with these recommended analyses and displays. So here's our vision in picture format for those who are a bit more visual. So the standard analyses portion, we're trying to fill that gap at the very end because there's been a lot of work and effort on the trial design and data side, but we're working on the table figure listing analysis display side of things. And then here's the code sharing part. We're having a reusable code library that everybody can contribute to and use. It's a little bit of a SAS and R focus right now, but certainly not limited to SAS and R, and it would include the code associated with our standard analyses, but also other code. So it's not limited to just the code associated with our standard analyses or recommended displays. It's kind of set up to take any and all code that people are willing to contribute. So this is stayed stable. We have 3 focus areas, 5 active projects. So the script, we have 3 projects associated with the reusable code library, the repository. We have 1 project team on the analysis and display white papers, and another project team focusing and helping us with our communication and education efforts. We have had some changes in our project lead, so that continues. We appreciate all the help we had in the past, and we have some new blood coming to help us with some of these efforts as well. So we're looking forward to additional involvement from various people. We also have a new project, so we are absolutely looking for people to get involved in this project. And this is a project looking at for creating good test data sets. So while CDISC has some pilot data sets available for the public to use for various purposes, and we certainly have team members who have data sets that we might be able to use for testing purposes, it's become clear that they're not always sufficient to be able to test some of the things that we're trying to test. So there's some of the recommended analyses and displays that we have expect certain types of data that may not exist in these pilot data sets. So we are trying to improve that. Peter Schaefer has offered to lead this effort, but we are building this team. So if you are interested or know anyone who might be interested, we are looking to build this particular team. We also have a new project idea. This is one that we don't necessarily have the expertise within our own working group. So we're kind of advertising it as a project that we're looking for people to lead and participate. So this one, if you or know somebody who might be interested in this, we would absolutely love to get this going. And that relates to collection instructions. And we do have a need for more consistent instructions to help our efforts in getting to standard analyses and displays. When we're working on our displays, it has become quite clear that some displays we might not be able to do depending on how the data were collected. And currently there's a lot of variability, and even things like adverse events and medications and disposition, there's still a lot of variability in how this data is collected. And improving this will help improve our efforts on getting to standard analyses. So here's a list of some of our milestones since March. We have had cross-working group discussions, for example, with the non-clinical group and the steering committee, to have some focused discussions on how best to keep things moving with developing code for the repository. We have had a lot of scriptathons now, and that has really been good. We've been getting a lot of good content, but getting it to the point where it's actually tested and qualified and a little bit more ready to use has been a struggle for our group, and the non-clinical group has been willing to help us think through this because they want to start an effort too with developing some reusable code for their efforts. So we've been really trying to think of a strategy, and the volunteer model is quite hard here because some of this code development work can be time consuming. But we're considering, instead of having a real fancy code that can do, anything for any study, we're going to kind of maybe readjust our goal and look for maybe example code or code blocks or macros. So there are discussions going on to help figure out which direction to move here. We received more Jumpstart code from the FDA's Jumpstart program, and that's getting added to the repository with the appropriate documentation. And sub-teams were created to continue work on the analysis and displays that are in the central tendency white paper to get some of that more workable and usable. For the white paper project team, we just finished our 6th white paper that's ready to be posted for public review, and that will likely come even this week, so that's just getting done. So for deliverables for public review, the AE white paper you'll see soon, and we'll love any help you can get to get that publicized, advertised, route it to anyone you can think of that would be interested. And that does include your medical group, medical writers. If this is, certainly beyond computational stats or project stats or, people working on analysis plans. So we would love a very broad review of this white paper. Our due date's going to be mid-October, and then once we get those comments, we're hoping to finalize it by the end of the year. So this is kind of the last chance to receive comments. The next white paper that we're hoping to get out for public review before the end of the year is one related to hepatotoxicity analysis and displays. So that's going to be next in the queue. So our needs are, we're always welcoming new project team members. That's always a need and interest for our group. And we would like increased participation in our white papers, so any help we can get. And for the white papers that we already have, so we already have 5 final white papers, we would love it if people would use them, actually use them when they're developing their statistical analysis plans and when they're developing their standards, internal standards. We hope this becomes a good resource for companies. And we always need more participation in developing the reusable code, and help keep your eyes open for any existing code that might need a place to go, because we are, we've done a lot of work on the repository itself and the legal licensing and so forth, so people can take advantage of that and put any code they're willing to share into the repository. And then here's just a list of our different list box groups, so you can certainly join any one of these and start participating with us. I think that's it.
Thanks, Mary.
I'll pass it on.
So our next presenter will be Jane Lozano from the Optimizing the Use of Data Standards Working Group. Give you a similar update.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see this?
Yep, we can hear you as well.
All right, thank you. I am one of the co-leads for the Optimizing the Use of Data Standards Working Group. DJ Chahatre is also one of the co-leads. I first want to echo what Scott said about getting involved with PhUSE and the working groups. I have met so many wonderful people and networked with so many people by becoming involved in a working group, and you have the opportunity to help others as well. I put that plug in for you, Scott, on being a part of PhUSE. It's been a very rewarding experience for me. The mission, let me see if I need to hide this control panel. There we go. The mission of our working group, it's out on the wiki, and really the part that I want to focus on is what we do is identify specific gaps that prevent FDA and industry from optimizing the use of data standards, and we collaborate to close those gaps. Milestones, since the last CSS, standardizing data within the inspection site selection process, the gap analysis has been done. There is a white paper created. It is out on the PhUSE wiki. The next steps is to submit that to CDISC. The person that was actually leading this group has since retired. She has passed it on to someone else, and I will be following up with that person regarding the next steps. The study data standardization plan, that was actually my project, my first project that I volunteered to work on at my very first CSS conference. So talk about diving right in, but once again, it's been a very rewarding experience. We created a lot of deliverables, a template, completion guidelines, example documents, sponsor implementation plan. They're all available on the PhUSE wiki, and I actually encourage you to start using the template and reading through the documents and providing feedback. The deliverables are with FDA. They're going to issue an FR notice for intent to review this year. That is my understanding, but that doesn't mean that you can't use what's there. We're utilizing it within Lilly, and I want others to use it too, and if you have any comments, to send those to me as I'm keeping track of what those are. This is to meet an FDA binding guidance to provide a standardization plan, which gets into exchange standards, terminology standards. FDA wants to know those as early as possible, no later than the end of phase 2. That's what the template, really the meat of that template, is listing studies. Studies that are within an IND, an indication, and what studies are going on right now, from non-clinical to your early phase to your late phase. We have a couple of new projects, and this is the one that Scott was referring to, that is the collaboration with CDISC. It has now been renamed. If you go out to the PhUSE wiki, it's called Standards Nuances by Version. It is now going to be out on the wiki renamed. It is called SDTM Atom Implementation FAQ. And it is, as you can read, what the project is about, and it is our first project with CDISC. There are 6 primary topics that they're going to be addressed, because as you can imagine, this is a very, very broad subject, and we spent a lot of time at the last CSS just brainstorming, and then got project leads. We have Barry from CDISC and DeHaven and Matt from the PhUSE side of it, and they've really done a great job of really trying to create a scope. What is it exactly that they want to address? SEND has done something similar, and we are going to use those learnings from that group to put this together. You can see what those 6 primary topics are, and they have met, but they are always looking for a few more good men and women to join the group. The other project is a data reviewer's guide in XML. This is being led by my committee, and somebody from Semantic Technology that we would like to have as a lead for that. You can read what the description of this project is. He is definitely, my recruiting members, definitely wants people to help him with this project. The deliverables that we have prior to the next CSS in 2017, my hope is that the final deliverables for the study data standardization plan will be out on the PhUSE document repository or wherever they're placed, much where the study data reviewers guide, the analysis data reviewers guide deliverables are. And those 2 reviewers guide came out of this working group. But wherever it's going to be placed is where I hope that they will be there prior to the next CSS. The next project, and I'm leading that one as well, is the Legacy Data Conversion Plan and Report. We've actually been working on this for a couple of years, where it kind of took a hiatus. We were trying to really figure out where it should go, and then we saw in the Technical Conformance Guide that it's part of the Study Data Reviewers Guide. We've created a template, but then actually I've had to go back and readdress that. It's not as easy as you think. First of all, trying to define what legacy data is and what exactly do you put in this report. Technical Conformance Guide shows at a very high level what they want to see, but then when you're actually trying to update the Study Data Reviewers Guide template, it's not that easy. Very good people on this project who have gone through these conversions. I'm sure most people have, because of having legacy data and now converting it to standardized data. But my hope is to have the template, the completion guidelines for the SDRG, example documents available for the PhUSE, FDA PhUSE users group review. That is my hope prior to the next CSS. The Reviewer's Guide and Define XML project, which is led by Sandy Van Pelt, she would like to have a completion and posting of the white paper on the wiki planned this year. And in doing that, as they're going through this project, they also identified updates to the Study Data Reviewers Guide. And we'll work together with the Legacy Data Conversion Plan and also her group as well to see if we can implement possibly what she has come up with in her working group. The Define 2.0 implementation style sheet recommendations, they had a couple deliverables coming out of this, the completion guidelines document and style sheet recommendations. I need to get a hold of the working group lead for that and find out if this is still in their timeline. I would hope that it is, but I need to verify. Project involvement. And I realized I forgot to change the slide for the new name. This is the one that is no longer Standards Implementation Nuances by Version. It is the name that is on the previous slide. Additional working members are invited to join. They are meeting on the 14th of September at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like to be involved, I know they would love to have you. You can go back to the contact information and on the slides that I'm assuming will be shared. And then also the Data Reviewers Guide in XML, they really need folks. They need the Semantic Technology co-lead and then the working group members. They can't do it without you. These projects can't be done without active participation and active involvement. And I'll tell you, what I love is coming to the conference now and meeting the people that I've worked with, that I've only spoken to by phone, and then seeing them in person is great, because sometimes you have a picture of what you think somebody looks like when you meet them, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But it is just a great opportunity to meet the people that you've been working with. And these two projects, if I go back, is the SDM Atom implementation. Those are the three folks that are part of that group project, and then Mike as part of the Data Reviewers Guide in XML. And that is all I have. And of course, as a Stormtrooper, we want you to join our projects. With that, I will now pass it over to Sue DeHaven.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. There we go. I believe it's to you now.
There is. And we'll put in slide mode. There you go. Scott, everything look okay?
Oh, it's good, Sue.
Okay, great.
I can hear you as well. Thanks.
All right, super. So I'll go through the non-clinical topics working group update and our aim for the CSS in 2017. We are the second working group that changed our name, and even though Scott mentioned that it's for more focus, you can see our name broadened a little bit, and in fact, just looking at a brief sentence of the mission of our group, we really have shared challenges across multiple different non-clinical data topics, and with different stakeholders too. So we thought we'd maybe generalize our working group name a bit more to encompass really all the different areas that we touch on, and then we look to our projects to show where we're focusing on this year. So coming out of the CSS this past March, as we reported at that time. We had nine non-clinical projects emerging from the breakout groups that we had there. 5 of those were focused on send implementation topics. Three of those were projects that we are maintaining from the previous year, so they are continuing into this year. And then 2 of those projects are brand new. And then we have 4 projects on the topic of analysis and visualization. 3 of those have been essentially extended from the previous year. They all had posters and white papers, and there were just additional interests in analysis and visualization that, even though those teams kind of came into the CSS thinking, oh, we might be done, just through the discussions and new ideas realized that they could extend their scope a bit and do some more work. And then we have 1 new project in the analysis and visualization area. So we're carrying a total of 9. That's a big Emerald Lagasse, bam, 9 this year. And at first I thought it was going to be a lot to manage, but all the teams are super engaged, and it's really been a pleasure, I think, for many of us. So of the 3 send implementation projects, that we're carrying forward, these are more or less projects that we maintain annually. So all of these teams are always looking for additional people to participate. We're happy to catch you up on different, on the backgrounds, on getting you up to speed if you're a new person joining. That's always really a pleasure to do, and we're open to that. The Send Implementation User Group, they are the ones that manage the Send Implementation FAQ. That is the non-clinical counterpart of the SDTM ADAM implementation FAQ that Jane mentioned. We also maintain the non-clinical SDRG, and just this past year we made a decision to annualize our Send Readiness Survey. So we really hope to see some evolution. All of us hope so. I'm sure FDA hopes that companies evolve in their Send readiness capabilities. And for those of us on the industry side implementing, we hope to show our progress in becoming more and more ready more efficiently. One of the analysis and visualization projects is wrapping up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So we really have 8 projects working toward March 2017 deliverables, and as I mentioned, new members, new collaborations, and new ideas are always welcome. We already have 2 project proposals in the queue for prioritization at CSS 2017 or before if we have the bandwidth, to really focus the team on non-clinical defined file topics and implementation, and the next endpoint modeling project focusing really on drug disposition topics such as anti-drug antibodies. So those are both showing some serious interest. I'm not even sure we can hold out till March 2017 before we want to do those. The other big thing I wanted to remind everybody about, kind of following on Scott's mention of the European CSS that was held in June, we did have a really well-received and I think really well-organized non-clinical topics breakout session group during that meeting. One of the really standout accomplishments of that meeting were the real extensive engagement of the regulatory authorities, not just FDA, but also PMDA from Japan and European Union regulatory authorities attending with interest. So we're really, really appreciating that kind of participation, and everyone came out of that with feeling a lot of benefit from attending. And the other topics, industry perspectives on Send implementation via different solutions, CRO versus pharma. Each of those companies revealing their challenges, which I think is a very open, transparent behavior that PhUSE really helps us support. And looking forward into how Send will evolve and be used across industry. It was really excellent discussions All of the presentations from that meeting are posted on our wiki as well. So I want to remind everybody, if you want to take a coffee and read through some of that, it's some really good stuff. So the next two slides are really reference slides for you. You know, print them out or set them on your desktop somewhere. This gives you the contact information to all of the non-clinical projects in these next two slides. Links to the wikis, email links to the people who are leading those projects, and just a brief sentence on their objectives, which are quite more described in the wiki. So these are our 5 send implementation projects. The user group, where they maintain the FAQ, the SDRG, the survey, and then also our 2 new projects, excuse me, data consistency, where the existence of differences between the send data sets and the study report are under discussion. They're identifying them, addressing whether they're valid or not, how to approach managing them. This is a really interesting project, and they're yielding some great results even for other teams. And then the test submission forum, which is a new project this year that was defined to help identify if companies are feeling barriers about using the FDA test submission process, just to make sure that we can address, streamline, and mitigate any kind of technical roadblocks, let's say, to submit our electronic data in a smooth way and without any delays, which none of us like. The second slide of projects, these are the analysis and visualization projects. Application of send data for analysis, a really great project looking at, now that we have data in this format, how can we leverage that to make analysis easier? And of course, they are quite related and collaborating with the non-clinical scripts assessment group, a similar group as Mary mentioned, where now we have these standard formats of data. What can we do to facilitate the analysis, to leverage things that have already happened on the clinical side for non-clinical, et cetera, things like that. Visualization of group differences for histopathology. This is a group that's extended this year to cross-domain and multi-study analysis deliverables. And the investigating endpoint modeling. I mentioned earlier we have an idea for a project for ADA data. This team addressed biomarkers already, and that is one of the deliverables that are soon coming out on the PhUSE wiki for deliverable review. So a really nice paper on biomarkers. So print those out or set them aside on your desktop, and you'll have quick reference to everything that we're doing in non-clinical. So highlights and upcoming events. I just want to go through a few of the topics on here. This kind of gives us the status as of August of all of the projects, and particularly the non-clinical study data reviewers guide. This is the one that we get questions about where that is now. Jane mentioned the upcoming FR notice for the study data standardization plan. You can see that different projects in PhUSE are generating deliverables that they're not, let's say, FDA issued requirement deliverables, but they are sort of industry good practice and hopefully best practice on ways to do this. And FDA is starting to utilize these deliverables to say, hey, we can point to those PhUSE deliverables and say this is a good way to do it. And they're doing that through their intent to use process. So this is relatively new for us, but SDRG, the non-clinical one, has gone through that this year. The process going forward, I think as of early this spring, the expectation was that comments will be considered comments that are given on the non-clinical SDRG will be considered with the comments from the FR notice from last year on the clinical SDRG. The outcome of that consideration by the FDA will be expected to be incorporated into approximately an October 2016 update of the study data technical conformance guide. And that's where we'll see if there's any types of changes that we need to incorporate into SDRG. Both the clinical and the non-clinical SDRG teams have continued to maintain the wiki content there and are committed to making sure that those deliverables continue to comply with any FDA updates to the technical conformance guide. So this is an area where ongoing maintenance of those templates, we're always looking for people who want to join in and help us out with that. Send implementation user group, the FAQs being updated all the time. Interestingly, we're getting 36 more posts per month this year than last year, and I expect that'll go up even more. It's a very active site, and much appreciation to the team that's maintaining that. Application for send data for analysis. This group is really gathering quite a lot of great reference information and starting to work with the Scripps group there. So I think you find on their wiki site quite a lot of resources if you have questions on what other companies are doing related to representing data that is typical of a send data package. The Investigating Endpoint Modeling Group, as I mentioned, the white paper on biomarker modeling is ready for public review. They have additionally formally communicated to CDIS some recommendations for consideration in coming versions of SEND, how to handle variables related to biomarkers, and also some recommendations on some needed metadata management for ADA. So that's a great paper. I suggest you have a look at that and feel free to make comments. The visualization of group-related differences in histopathology, they are working on quite a robust article that they intend to publish on the journal. That, of course, also will be available for review. So we're looking forward to that. And they even have a couple of other papers already planned that will be delivered with the CSS in 2017. And our new cherry on our cake, the Industry Send Progress Survey. We had a super amount of interest in that last year from regulatory authorities as well as industry. This is now an annual event for the results to be presented at each CSS. We're considering improvements for next year's survey. PhUSE has offered us a new survey tool that should help us yield even more robust results. And we're probably looking to issue that. We just started discussing maybe end of this year, very early next year in order to have the results available for March. The test submission forum is about wrapping up. This is a group that's really sort of dug into what do industry people need, what companies need in order to leverage the FDA test submission process. They've come up with a great list of questions, suggestions to feedback to FDA about that. And in fact, jumping down, the data consistency team has also done that. In the meantime, around test submission and data consistency, FDA themselves have quite generously offered a fit for use pilot, dedicated some resources for that, that kind of helps pull this information together really well. So a nice collaboration. CDISC will look to publish the outcome of fit for use. And of course, we'll have plenty of links on that from our non-clinical website. So a lot of really interesting implementation experience coming out of those two groups. And then the non-clinical script assessment project, I see this as one that's I expect is going to grow and grow in their strategy. They're working on scope right now, figuring out how to work with clinical, and I think that's an area where we really can work transversely. So looking forward to great outcomes from there. And that's it. So thank you for listening. Thanks for joining the webinar today. And I will now pass it to Geoff. you go.
Thank you very much. So I'll make a start. I'm assuming you can't see this thing, but okay, so my name is Geoff Low. I'm co-chair of the Trends and Technologies group. It's actually Immersion Trends and Technologies, but that caused it to wrap and look really terrible. So I've just shortened it slightly. We've got 4 groups on the go at the moment. I'm just going to very briefly speak through them. The alternative transport format is the first one. It's one that I'm chairing at the moment. The overview of this project was to kind of come up with a sensible replacement for the existing SAS transport files, SAS transport Row 5, and look what we could be doing about data submissions or data transfers in the future. So the project overview is essentially, we've been coming up with a way to actually quantify it. If we say that another format is, we could find another format to replace SAS transport files, then how would we say whether this one is better than the original? So to do that, we've decided to come up with a set of criteria which we can use to index a particular format. And then we've sort of developed these criteria up. We've made them as discrete as possible, and we're about to send out a questionnaire to the wider PhUSE community to allow them to evaluate and say, okay, well, these criteria are important to me, these criteria aren't. The reason for doing that is essentially to move from just a list of criteria to a weighted list of criteria against which we can evaluate all the new formats and see whether or not they are improvement or no change. So what we're intending to do for the remainder of the year is actually send out the questionnaire. That should all be in process, so please keep an eye out for that. We're going to then do some sort of elementary analysis on the responses themselves, and then we're going to put the results of all this into a white paper that we're going to release as part, hopefully around the time of the annual conference, although I am conscious that the year is slipping away, so it's probably going to be more towards the end of the year. Next group is the Data Visualisations group. It's had a bit of an interesting year. It really took off after the CSS event. There was a sort of a derivation and a pushing towards sort of risk-based monitoring, and there was a sort of influx of resource coming across from the DIA group. Over the passage of time, it hasn't quite worked out, so I think the group are sort of focusing much more. It's still very active, it's still very engaged, and the people have got a lot to say. So their mandate is actually to look at data and the best way of presenting it so that you can get the most value from it. And they're going to be working towards delivering a white paper towards the end of the year, just talking about the different types, a subset of types of data and how they might be represented to deliver good positive meaning. Lowering the barriers to cloud adoption. This is one of the more venerable groups amongst us. They've been going for just about since the year after the start of the, or basically since the start of the Emerging Trends and Technologies group. They've had a pretty active year in terms of publicisation of what they've been up to. They presented a webinar to the Pistoia Alliance on the work that they've been doing about actually coming up with a framework to allow people to evaluate the adoption of cloud technology. Because I think it's the sort of thing that people are very aware of. They're like, okay, we should be in the cloud, what next? And I think this group has been quite successful at putting that together. They had a very successful computational science symposium earlier this year, and then looking at what comes next in terms of the framework itself. They're continuing to work on the framework. They're aiming to have another release, the framework out towards the end of the year. They will be presenting actually at the annual conference on the work that they've been doing, and there's a strong possibility that they will be taking part in the CSS discussion club. So if it's something you're not familiar of or would like to take part or find a bit more out, there will be a group of them getting together at the conference. You can have a discussion with them. They've also maintained the contact with the EMA and they've done a presentation to the clinical practice working group. So, as I said, the goal for the remainder of the year is to present the framework at the Adoption of Cloud Technology at the PhUSE Annual Conference. They have been invited by DIA to present at the Clinical Forum towards the end of October on the work that they've been doing. And there's a possibility of sort of further follow-up with the Pistoia Alliance. Last but not least, the statistical computing environments. So last year they had a very active year in terms of putting together a white paper that sort of summarized the state of the statistical computing environment. As we're all aware, there's a lot of products out there, and it's quite hard for people to try and work out exactly what's what. So they were able to put together the white paper and make that available. And then this year they wanted to move into sort of more of a, okay, what's next? Let's see how we can build upon that to provide some sort of concrete examples that they can work through. So they've been working on a set of use cases across this year, and just working on getting sort of the average, or sort of the average experience across the industry as to how people expect to integrate with these systems and use them. But what they've found is that it's kind of moved from the group sort of comfort zone in terms of their skills and experience into something that's a wee bit beyond that. So they're having discussions at the moment as to how they can engage, because it is a bit more difficult over above some of the earlier work that we're doing, just in terms of a lack of good overlap with the skills that they need. So they're having some ongoing discussions about what they're going to do with the group. They think they'll be in a position to publish a couple of the use cases that they have got in final, and then that will take it from there. I think that's it, so I'm going to pass it back over to Scott.
So, thank you, Geoff. I will wrap our presentations up with the Semantic Technologies Working Group. As a reminder, if you do have any questions on what you've heard today, please feel free to type them into the functionality in the GoToWebinar, and we can get to them if we had time before the top of the hour. If not, we will address them offline. So I will very quickly try to get us through the Semantic Technologies Working Group. So the mission for this working group is to investigate how formal semantic standards can support the clinical trial and the non-clinical trial life cycles from protocol through submission. And the focus of the working group really has been around RDF modeling, as we've kind of continued to expand this working group throughout the last 2.5 to 3 years. We realized maybe we need to move beyond RDF as our semantic technology of choice and start to explore other technologies in that space. So I'm going to walk you through very briefly the working groups or the projects that are part of this working group, beginning with this use cases for linked data. So when we started this working group or project within, it's actually a project within the Emerging Trends and Technologies working group that became its own working group, we never really documented the use cases, the reasons why pharma should be exploring semantic technologies. Why do we need to move beyond the 2x2 table or the SAS dataset construct? So what this project is trying to do is document use cases where if we had a different underlying data model, whether it's linked data or whether it may be something else, that we could actually be more efficient in the way that we're doing our jobs today. And we've tried to move this project forward a few times, and it's been a little bit of a mix. So we are going to try to reboot this project one final time. We are going to have a teleconference in the middle of September. It will probably be shortly after the teleconference that you heard with regards to the Standards Nuances project. So if you are interested in exploring this, please feel free to reach out to me directly and we can get you involved. And we will be sending out an invite to that teleconference via the PhUSE mailing list. So hopefully we'll get some traction on this as we move forward. One project within this working group that has actually been very successful and is just starting to wrap up is this analysis results in RDF project. Its mission statement was really to evaluate the conversion of clinical trial results as well as clinical trial metadata into RDF. As I mentioned, the project is starting to wrap up. Some of the final deliverables are nearing completion, and those deliverables are a white paper, R package, and technical specification. You can find the current iterations of those different packages on the PhUSE wiki. Again, this project, similar to what we heard with some other projects within working groups, are actually starting to look for new ideas for a future project to either conduct under this analysis results in RDF banner or to look to even move beyond that. So if you are interested in either the activities as this project starts to close out, or the deliverables, or just have some thoughts on what they could do as far as the next step, perhaps a proof of concept in this space. The contact information for the two folks that are leading this working group are here in the presentation and will be made available after this webinar. Another project that we have within this working group is the clinical program design in RDF. Its mission statement was to investigate modeling aspects of a clinical program design, to capture, retain, and share information both within a company as well as across companies. Similar to what we saw with the analysis results in RDF project, this project itself is also starting to wrap up. They finalized a very good, very good white paper on clinical development design framework. I encourage you to go out and have a look at that. It is available on the PhUSE wiki, and it's also accessible from the PhUSE catalog of deliverables that I mentioned earlier. This project is in the process of socializing this white paper, similar to what you just heard Geoff talk about with the cloud project. This project is also looking to present at various industry conferences as well as other forums to begin to socialize their work. And they're thinking about a next phase at this point, perhaps planning technical requirements on top of their framework, as well as developing a clinical development design ontology. Again, they're not really sure if they're going to move this forward. It's another opportunity that if you are interested in this clinical program design or clinical development program space, that was another opportunity for you to get involved. Regulations in RDF was a bit of a companion project to not only the clinical program design project, but as well as an older project that was born out of the Semantic Technologies working group to represent the CDISC foundational standards in RDF. This regulations in RDF was tasked with building a searchable resource of guidance documents in RDF and the RDF framework, such that you could link those documents and the important pieces of those documents to other graph databases that access or that reference that information, such as the CDASH standard references some of the regulations, and it would be an opportunity to link the CDASH standard directly to these regulations. So again, this project is also getting to that place where they've put a deliverable forward and are starting to look to next steps. So they have developed a searchable UI that's being limited to subject matter experts for this project only. They've developed a concept map, an RDF ontology, and they've modeled parts 11 and parts 201 in both the concept map as well as the ontology, and they're starting to do some additional testing of tools to map other regulatory guidances. They have actually put forward a white paper with their progress to date, and again, that is also available on the PhUSE wiki or the PhUSE catalog of deliverables. So I know I talked rather quickly, as I do have a propensity to do, and we are just about 1 minute past the hour. Just to kind of summarize not only this working group, but you know, some of the other information that we've heard today. There's been a lot of work that's been done. There's been a lot of great work that's been done, not only in the Semantic Technologies working group, but across the other 4 working groups that you've heard from today. There's a lot of new projects that are starting. There's a lot of a call for new ideas to kind of continue to move this forward. As I mentioned when I started the webinar, there's been a lot of great work that's been done within the computational science collaboration in 2016. I think it's been one of our most successful years within the framework that we've sort of put forward in this collaboration, as well as with the working groups and the symposium. So one thing I will mention before we close is that PhUSE is hosting a single-day event in December 2016 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and it's sort of tangential to what we heard with Geoff and the Emerging Trends and Technologies working group, even across the other working groups. We're really looking about how we can bring pharma and devices out of the Stone Age. When we say out of the Stone Age, I'm talking out of the technical Stone Age, which technology also incurs processes and people as well. So if you're interested in that single day event about how we can actually move things forward and start to do our jobs a lot more efficiently than we are now, this is a great single day event to get involved in. The information about this SDE is currently up on the PhUSE website. So again, I would encourage you to take a look at that single day event. If you are interested in presenting at that event, there will be some deadlines for papers and abstract presentations there as well. So again, please help us get pharma out of the Stone Age. And finally, if you are interested in joining the computational science collaboration, this was a word cloud that was generated in response to questions that were asked at the end of the US 2016 CSS. And as you can see there in the center, the key point of this activity or of this entity is really collaboration. It's about getting involved, staying involved, and getting drugs to patients that are desperately need them. So again, the 2017 CSS, the dates are on the books. There is information about this on the PhUSE website. So again, we are going to have this Marching to March 2017 series occurring throughout the next few months to give you more information about what's going on in the computational science collaboration. The next webinar will be at the end of September, and some of the new projects you heard about today, we actually are going to take that September webinar and do a deeper dive into some of those new projects. So again, opportunities for you to get involved. I want to thank the working group leads for their time and for their effort putting the presentations together. I think they were excellent. I actually learned a lot about some of the new projects that are going on. I hope you did as well. I want to thank you for taking your time to participate in today's webinar, and we hope to see you again in September and then see you at the 2017 meeting. So thanks everyone for your time, and we'll chat again in September.
Thanks, Scott.